taxes. And that would be constant money, not a one-time fix, but additional money going into our revenue.
Thank you. There is a disparity between the federal tax conformity, the federal tax law, the new one, and the state tax code, primarily in the area of personal exemptions, and that does need to be fixed. But the Republicans right now in the legislature are holding out for a huge tax cut, in addition to basic conformity, which people can probably live with. But to create a huge hole in the budget for the next administration is an abomination. That should not happen. It's one reason there's a bit of chaos in the legislature under the dome right now, right, Mr. Alley? Tax conformity is being turned into huge tax cuts and a huge structural gap in the state budget for the coming administration. The Republicans know that, Mr. LePage knows that, and that has to be resisted at all costs. What I hear about in my hometown and elsewhere on the campaign trail constantly is the property taxes. I would like to do a lot more to relieve people of the property tax burden, and Donna Dion's hit the nail on the head. The circuit breaker program needs to be expanded and rejuvenated. The homestead exemption needs to be expanded. We did this when I was in the legislature. We created a working waterfront exemption in the Maine Constitution. Those kinds of efforts have to be done, and fully funding education. Thank you.
I think the federal tax system that's being pushed through by President Trump is devastating. It creates further income inequality, and it's going to create a deficit that our great-grandkids are going to be paying for. It's absolutely devastating. And now we've seen that here in the state of Maine, where Governor LePage likes to talk about it. He's cutting taxes, but all he's done is shifted. I saw this in the school board in Sanford when cut revenue sharing. We lost $1.5 million out of a $30 million budget. In my hometown, we have over 70% of our kids in our schools on free and reduced lunch. It was devastating, absolutely devastating. What you're going to see now, because the super wealthy can afford the tax advisors, you're going to see them try to incorporate themselves so that they can get the lower corporate rate by turning themselves into corporations. I mean, it is insane, the loopholes that are being built in for the wealthy. I'm a strong proponent of a progressive tax system. I think it's the fairest system to be able to provide essential services for people who need it, and I fight for that as governor. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So, I want you to remember back to when the federal tax bill was being passed. Remember, dark of night, things in the margins, no public hearing, lobbyists paying to have things written in the margins. That's what we're trying to conform to. Right? So Janet's right, we have to conform to some of those things in the federal bill, but they're going beyond what the lobbyists paid for in a money and politics situation and making it even worse by adding to it here in the state. So, and it's being held out, it's tax conformity versus Medicaid expansion. That's what caused the breakdown in the legislature last night, or the last couple of weeks, but last night. I always think about, I was just paying my taxes, I don't know about you, me and my best friend TurboTax, trying to figure it out. And I think the state in Maine, pays more in tax exemptions than we actually bring in our budget. Tax exemptions are things that, by and large, special interests have bought and paid for in the state. There's a book of them, it's about this big, it's a red book. Now there's some that we would all agree with, like food and that kind of thing. But if we could look at those tax exemptions and say, are they really providing jobs? Are they really helping our economic development? Are they actually doing anything? We don't ever have those conversations. I think there's a lot of money there that we could do, and we have to look at exemptions across the board, because we always argue about the top rate, but no one in the top rate ever pays it. You notice that? So I think we need to look at how we fix that as well.
Okay, we're ready now for some questions from the audience, and we have some time reserved for UMM students if any of them would like to ask questions. So volunteer in the front row right away. Please state your name and please.
Try to stand up.
Hi, I'm Jeff Moore. I'm a junior here at UMM in the business program. I'm also the Officer of Financial Affairs for the Student Senate. We just went to Farmington for an SGA conference. And seeing their campus and comparing it to our campus, it's night and day. When you drove in, you might have noticed the potholes out there. You might have noticed the wet floor sign right outside of this room. Our campus is quite literally physically falling apart. If you're elected governor, what will you do to ensure that UMM gets the support it needs to stay going?
Thank you. Mark, you get to start this one.
Great. I think this goes kind of to piggyback a little bit on the last question around tax conformity, this question of equitability and fairness. And I think this is a striking example of right here at home how we could really manage in a different way to make sure that resources that come from the state are equitably spent amongst campuses. That I think is an important starting place, and the governor gets to set the table as it relates to the budget, the priorities, and that makes every difference in the world about where you land. This current governor has, I'll just take public education as an example, and started by cutting public education. We have to fight, and I did every single year to get a budget that put more money into public education, but we just got back to the starting point. So I think it's a matter of starting point as a governor and dictating and directing some of that funding.
I think, Jeff, one of the key things you're hitting on is the facility, the equipment, and everything that you need for a proper education. And what you might see in potholes or wet spots or whatever else is not necessarily everything we're missing out on, because it could be equipment, it could be technology. And I think the priorities is initially setting up a priority itself, setting up a plan where we have representation for all of, be it Farmington or University of Southern Maine or all of them, looking at their infrastructure, looking at the levels so everyone is equally learning at a quality level with the best tools, and at the same time looking at the facilities, and then determining by looking at funds how we can prioritize and have a capital budget outlaid over the next 3 to 5 years, so people actually know, not start guessing what they're doing, but know what's going to happen. Thank you.
That's me, right? Well, I live almost on the campus of the University of Maine, Farmington. I'll tell you, there are potholes, actually. They're town-maintained roads, but not always well-maintained. I think the first thing I would do is make sure that the DOT takes care of Route 1, all the way from Calais to Cherryfield. That's an abomination. And the roads within the campus need to be maintained. Obviously, the buildings and the administrative costs for buildings and grounds for all the campuses should be fair and equal, not have the disparity you're pointing out. The most important thing the governor does is make appointments. And you make appointments to the Board of Trustees for the university. And those are extremely important appointments. And I would want to make sure that those appointments are distributed equally among rural and urban areas, and that Western Maine and Eastern Maine and down east is fairly represented on the Board of Trustees to make sure your voices are heard and my voices are heard.
State funding for our higher education has consistently been declining over the years, particularly when you compare it in the last 30 years. I'm a strong proponent of increasing funding for the entire University of Maine system, not only with respect to facilities, but with respect to research and development funding. For every dollar that you invest, over and over again, study after study says $10 return. And the biggest problem, you go to any employer in the state of Maine, recruiting, retention, attrition management, workforce training over and over again. And I want to turn the University of Maine entire system into a flagship organization, and I believe we can do that. You look at the best places that have created innovators and entrepreneurs, the Research Triangle down in North Carolina. You look at other parts throughout this country, they have invested in higher education and having the best quality people coming out of it. That's a big important point for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have a real opportunity to reinvest in our secondary education, post-secondary education in Maine, because I don't think that the quality of your education in the University of Maine system should depend on the zip code that you live in. And I think that's unfortunately how we've gotten there, how we've come to this place. So I think we have to look at our priorities in terms of investments, not just in terms of within the university system, which I think is also really important, but also in university system versus other things that we spend money on. The millions of dollars that we spend to try and attract big manufacturing companies to come to Maine, they're not coming. Imagine if we took that money and invested it in UMM, in places where we could teach entrepreneurial skills and new kinds of job training, look at R&D in emerging agriculture and aquaculture and all kinds of things that are coming. Imagine if that's how we spent our money. That's the kind of priorities I'll have as governor.
So when I graduated from the University of Southern Maine, we actually had, it's not the same statistics now, but we had a higher attrition rate than the University of Maine. So what I'm about to say is one of the most controversial things you can hear in higher education in Maine, but it's time to talk about it. And you hit the third rail on this question. So I'm going to show you a pie chart. This is the funding. Half goes to the University of Maine in Orono. And then you have 6 other campuses that are drawn out, and we are competing. You are competing with the University of Southern Maine for funding. How stupid is that? And it is the third rail. It is a really dangerous thing to say out loud, but we are at a point right now where we have to have those dangerous conversations, those conversations that really upend the system, because it is not working to have half the money go to one great, amazing campus. But it needs to be better distributed, and under my administration, I will be working to make that happen. It will not happen overnight, and I will need your help to do it. But if we don't fix this, it doesn't matter how big you grow the pie, you have to fix the way that the pie is allocated so that you can have everything fixed, not just the potholes.
Any other questions from UMM students?
Hi, my name's Denisha Lang, and I'm from Eastport. And going back to the Medicaid expansion, you guys all seemed really concerned about the opiate crisis we have here. And I think we can all agree that when someone gets clean around here, it's not long before they get back into the drugs. But my question is how do you guys plan to keep them away from the drugs once they're clean?
Good question.
We're starting with Donna.
Excellent question. It's not just cleaning the individuals, it's actually working as the full person, looking with the family and the support and the coping skills. Because you want the individual to transition back into the community. So it's not a one-time thing, clean them up, put them someplace, put them back out in the community. Because if you haven't developed some coping skills and actually the support systems, they're gonna be back very shortly. And if you look, there's 12 pilot programs taking place around the state of Maine. And during that time, they're actually looking at not sending people away, but how do we provide them with the proper supports so that they're now seeing less repetitive individuals and actually successes, and that's on a low-key type situation. So if we could continue doing that and having transitional programs and looking at them as a person, things would get better. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, great question. And I hear that all over the state of Maine, not just in Eastport or Washington County, but, you know, and I've done an op-ed with a 10-point plan on addressing the opioid epidemic, and it's near and dear to my heart. We've got to have recovery coaches at every emergency room and medication-assisted treatment all across the state of Maine, at every clinic, at every emergency room, and elsewhere. We've got to teach kids life skills and how to make decisions. And I'm not talking about DARE programs, I'm talking about decision-making efforts in the lower grades. And we've got to have good prevention programs and education programs and medication-assisted treatment, Suboxone, that kind of thing. And prescribing practices that are coming down. The statistics released today show that doctors in Maine are prescribing fewer opiates to begin with. Alternative therapies for pain, chiropractic, all kinds of alternative therapies for pain, and that kind of thing, to prevent people from getting addicted in the first place and to wean them off appropriately in a healthy way if they do become addicted.
The entrance points for addiction for opioids are different for many different people. We're human beings and we're prone to being addicted to things. And some people are getting it through surgery, some are getting it through depression, some are getting it through a gateway drug. It is different for everybody. The point of the hub and spoke approach that has worked nationally in places like Vermont and also in Seattle is that it's recognizing that it is a variation of approaches that helps people in different ways. One of the most successful is that I've seen is similar to the AA model, which is kind of a peer-to-peer approach. It's partnering people with folks who have been through similar experience, and which makes sense intuitively when you think about it. But it's recognizing at a real base level, the difference now is on the Republican side, and Governor LePage in particular has viewed this as a law enforcement issue instead of a chronic illness and an addiction issue. And until we make that switch mentally, we're not going to start turning the corner on it.
Yeah, I think we really have to stop treating it as a criminal issue and really look at the health issue that it is. And when we look at that, our jails have become our centers for behavioral health problems and addiction problems. And yet there's no services in those jails for anything. So we take people, we criminalize them, we put them in jails, and then they go out with no services whatsoever. And what do? They go right back to where they were. So we have got to take those folks and help them not be in jail, but to get service recovery. And I think we have to deal with the pain behind the pain. There's a lot of people, every way you enter, as Adam said, is different. But there's a lot of people in those circumstances who don't end up with an addiction issue. And we have got to look at community, the isolation that people feel. Every story I hear about addiction recovery starts with, at some point in their story, they say, I got out of high school and I was lost. I got out of this and I was lost. That's our opportunity to capture people, to have them be part of our communities, and to provide those kind of outreaches and services along with emotional help. And that's where the issue is. And that's where we have to start dealing with it.
My best friend was told by his father, who was a mill manager for many years, James, there's nothing here for you, you have to leave. And I think people in Washington County need a future, right? You need an economic future, something to look forward to. But moreover, we need to understand that the pharmaceutical companies targeted this county, of all counties in the country, as an experiment because they thought you were stupid. That's just wrong. So we now have to clean up their mess, and we need to hold them to account. We cannot criminalize this. I strongly support keeping heroin and opioid addiction defelonized possession. We need medical marijuana to be part of the solution. I just heard the phrase gateway drug. That is a myth. Medical marijuana is a gateway off of opiates. It is a prevention tool, and it needs to be a core part of the program. I cannot tell you how many people have said to me, thank you for your work, I got my life back. And we need to have a strong support network of communities so that people are not in a position where they feel that they have to go back. Kicking heroin is hard, and we need to recognize that. We have to stop stigmatizing people, and we have to stop stigmatizing the treatment options that are available.
So we have a governor right now that has a policy or a belief of, we're gonna figure this one out by either locking enough people up or letting them die. I mean, that is the bottom line here, and he's not shy in saying that. Until we understand this and address this as a public health issue, we're not gonna figure it out. So 417 people last year overdosed and aren't with us. In my administration, one of the first markers of success will be when those numbers start to drop down. And they're not going to start to drop down until we do invest in treatment, education, and prevention. There are some great models out there, but I believe the first thing we need to do is listen to people in recovery, in active recovery. And there's a lot of brave souls out there that are telling their stories, and one of them is a gentleman named Andrew Kazoulis. He's in graduate school right now, and he's the president of Young People in Recovery. We need to have conversations more with people that have been going through it and figuring this out and listening to them instead of pretending that we have all the answers. I think that's the first thing that we need to do.
Okay, we've used a little over half our time. We're officially probably a couple minutes behind schedule, but we're doing fairly well. We'll do one more UMM question, and for UMM students, you're certainly welcome to ask questions when it's opened up to everyone as well. But I have one over here. I'm going to give a little attention to this side of the room.
Hello, my name is Kristen King. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's very, very interesting and informative. My question is, I'm a senior here at UMM, and my question is, What are your plans to bring jobs to here in Washington County?
We're
Thank you very
top of the order again.
Are we again? Okay, great. Well, that's the question of the hour, isn't it? My gosh. And I was delighted to read the news about Baileyville and Woodland getting broadband, and I think that's an important step in the right direction. I know that's sort of specialized funding and specialized effort, but that needs to be done in all of the rim counties especially. Bringing broadband to these areas is important because that's part of economic development. It's part of the infrastructure of the present, not the future, but the present. We can no longer be a dial-up state and a broadband nation. And that's critical. We've got to be innovative and look at our properties and sell ourselves a little better. I want to be the best marketer for the state of Maine. I want to be the biggest cheerleader for the state of Maine and tell the world what great people we have, what a great state we are, what great natural resources we have. And I will market this area as well as any other area in the state of Maine and make sure that good paying businesses and clean resources will be here for the people of Washington County and elsewhere in the rural parts of the 2nd Congressional District.
Terrific question, Kristen, and I led off with this because I think it's the most important issue facing our state right now. It's growing our economy, particularly in our rural areas and our mill towns, and Washington County's been hardest hit. And I said it in the beginning, it is infrastructure, with the most important being broadband. It's workforce training and our competitive advantages. Real quickly on the competitive advantages. It's agriculture, it's aquaculture, it's renewable energy. I spent the majority of my life working in renewable energy. I'm convinced we can not only be a regional leader, but a global leader in clean energy. This equals real jobs in parts of our state that really need huge opportunities here in Washington County in that. And that increases the property tax base. It helps us in everything from the trades to the high tech to everything. I want to see those technologies made, developed, and manufactured here in Maine, and I want to see us lead again. This is an area we can in particular. Thank you.
Great. So I think one of the things we have to do is pay attention to what's happening in Washington County. You know, our economic development dollars, as I said before, are used to try and bring in a silver bullet from outside the state to come do something. And even then, if it doesn't come to Washington County, it doesn't make a difference here. What I want to do is make regional economic development and community development authorities that not just have ideas, but actually get the money. So we take the money away from people in Augusta who have been to Washington County one time and said hi and then walk away and don't remember anything, but give it to local people, regional people who know what's needed in terms of workforce development, in terms of investment, and in terms of what, local people, entrepreneurs do. We're the most entrepreneurial state in the country. You go by any driveway and it says, machine tool shop here, get your eggs here, get your boat cover here, right? But we do nothing to help those folks. We don't grow our economy from the bottom up. The last thing I think we have to do is we really have to pay, the only young people moving into the state, or the biggest cohort, is organic farmers. And we do nothing to help our small farmers. They need small batch processing, they need cooperatives for some of the machinery that they need. That is a huge economic development opportunity that we have not taken. It works here in Washington County as well.
We actually already have that here. It's called the Sunrise County Economic Council, and they're doing amazing work. We just need to expand on the work that they're already doing. So municipal broadband is going to be really important. All of you know that the work that Axiom Technology has been doing to try to bring DSL at least to Washington County, but what we need is beyond DSL. But the broadband is preempted by the FCC, meaning that we can't regulate it at the state level, which is supremely frustrating. And so municipal broadband and investing in that means that we can have greater control over it. As I mentioned earlier, Washington County really was starting to boom, if you can call it that, with the clean energy economy, with the wind development, with the aquaculture and the offshore wind and the offshore tidal was really great. And then the legislature and the governor decided to start cutting it back. We need to play to each other's strengths, right? We have the Eastport, one of the deepest ports. There have been investments there. We need to make sure that we're further developing the Eastport port so that we're in a position to be able to use that to get goods to market. We need to make sure that we are looking at what Washington County is good at already and then increasing it. But we also need to give you the basic infrastructure and tools. And as Janet pointed out, Route 1, I love the airline, but come on, in the middle of the night, man.
Moose Alley.
Watch out for the ghost.
So I will tell you my approach to economic development, and I'll tell you a really quick story that I think really represents my approach, no matter what the region of the state, no matter what industry. I think this entire state, we have opportunity to grow. One program that I worked with when I was in the Speaker's office with a Republican in the House called Brad Farron, was a logging training program. And we would have never figured this one out for the industry if we didn't go, show up, ask questions, listen, and be partners. And that's what I think is missing in state government right now. So we went up to Frenchville, sat with 30 different loggers with their own contract companies, and developed a program with them. Some state money in, Caterpillar put $1 million worth of capital investment in, and right now that program is rotating between 3 community colleges. Washington County Community College is one of them, and it has, you know, the first graduating class was last year. It is growing and expanding, but when kids graduate from that program, they have an employable credential that they can enter into the workforce earning $40,000 a year. And that's a real good living. You can buy a home and you don't have student debt that you're paying off for 20 years. So that's my approach to economic development, and whether it's Washington County, Hancock, or any part of the state.
Thank you. Donna?
I think my past experience have shown, when I was mayor, we did a strategic plan and we implemented what were the resources that were in the community. And that's what we should be doing with all the communities. The we is all of us together. It's not the state telling you what to do, but us looking at what you have for resources and then looking at what we have for funding. I was on the advisory board for the Work Investment Act, which brought money in so that we looked at the resources you had, what you were looking for, take the workforce that's here and train them specifically to expand the businesses that exist. What are your needs? The carrot is getting businesses to say, I can have a baseline trained staff to come in and do. So lots of people are here, they need jobs. What do they have for skills and how can we enhance them and how can we improve on the businesses that are here so more people are employed? Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from anyone now?
My name's Don Green. I'm a candidate for House District 141. House District 141 is the largest House district in the state of Maine. 53 different governmental municipalities. Approximately 9,000 people live in those 53 municipalities. About 2,800 of them are Democrats. I'm looking at a panel of Democrats that are running for governor. When I get in there, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire about everything you said here in Washington, what you're going to do for Washington County, because I will be representing the rural heart of Eastern Maine in Washington and Penobscot County. Now, I've heard what you're going to do for us. I want to tell you how, I want you to tell me how you're going to lift up the Democrats out of their doldrums here in Washington County, because we've been lied to so many times. And that what you're going to do for Washington County in reality, and not just, you say this to every other county in the place. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And starting with Adam.
Well, all right. Good luck in your race, Dylan.
Pat?
Look, and I said this earlier, as much as there has been an implosion on the Republican side, and there are some crazy things that are going on over there, we've got to stop saying, I'm not them, and think that that's going to get us elected. We need to start talking about how we're going to govern well. And the most important issue facing everybody in the state of Maine is that it's a great place to live if you can make a living. That is what's affecting everything, all the funding. It's got to be a growth plan. We've got to start talking about how we can start bringing jobs everywhere. I've been talking about it over and over and over again. You've heard me 3 times tonight. Infrastructure, workforce training, competitive advantages. That, in my mind, is the way that we grow this economy. We've got to be focused. We've got to show that we can lead again on the Democratic side. That's what I would do. Thank you.
I totally agree with you, and I think we have to stop talking and we have to start listening and leading. And so one of the things I'm committed to when I'm governor is I'm not going to spend my time in Augusta. when I'm the governor, I am actually gonna come and stay in Washington County for a month at a time and help and work and find out and listen to people and see what resources we can bring to triage to help Washington County and Piscataquis County and Aroostook County. We can't have a governor who sits in Augusta and says, oh, I'll call someone on the phone I met somewhere once or twice, or have the people who donated to me, I'll talk to them, because I will have talked to thousands of people who have donated $5. That is part of the problem. We have got to get democracy back into the hands of regular people, and we have to go listen. George Mitchell told me when I was first 26 years old, a couple of years ago, that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And he said politicians have forgotten that, and that's what you'll find from me.
So whether you elect me governor or not, I have no choice but to enjoy dinners in Baileyville regularly because all my close friends and family are there. So I get held to account not by the folks in this room, but at the dinner table. And let me tell you, you guys may be very good at holding people's feet to the fire, but when you got aunts and uncles, essentially, they're going to hold it even harder. You've been promised a casino. And you were denied it over and over and over again. I don't even like casinos, but I fought tooth and nail to make sure that we could have that right to have one here because it was economic development, and frankly, the tribes should have the right to be able to do what they want on their sovereign ground. I fought as hard as I could, and we came really close, but we couldn't get it done on that point. You were promised, Baileyville was promised that the bridge to Canada was going to go through Baileyville. It went through Calais, right? And so what did that do? Because Calais wanted it too. They created an unnecessary fight between the two of them, or maybe they didn't, I don't know. But I know that if you go through a different route, it would have been cheaper and it would have had less of an environmental impact. So there's been a lot of promises made to Washington County. Believe me, every time I'm up here, I hear it over and over and over again. It has been recounted to me because people care about it. I'm not here to make promises other than I will deliver Medicare for all to you. That's my big promise. But what I can tell you is that you will have someone who actually understands Washington County, the details of it, the people, and understands why it is such a special place and why it should be taken seriously, more than just about anybody, I think, who you've seen come running for governor for a long time. And Democratic governors have made you promises and they have failed. Every time. And we owe it to you to not do that.
So I heard some skepticism in your question, and well-founded skepticism, because I do agree with many on this panel that promises have been made and not kept. One of the things that you can rely on me is to follow through on my word. One of the reasons I think that my colleagues re-elected me as Speaker of the House is because I said what I was going to do and I did it. And we're not going to earn the trust of rural Maine again in one election cycle. I think we're going to fight hard to make sure that we do, but we can't do this with lip service, talking points, and press releases and drive-bys. We have to have a true, genuine commitment. The only way that I'm going to earn your trust is by showing you. And that means a lot of different things, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you and try to sell you a bill of goods. I just hope that you will trust, because I've served with folks like Representative Alley and a whole lot of others that understand how I carry myself, and that when I say something, I follow through on it. My mom calls it stubbornness, but I call it follow through. So.
I think if you look at my platform, I have one word for my platform, it's called respect. And respect goes two ways. It's earning your confidence, listening to what you're saying, looking at what's going on, really understanding and feeling what is going on, and also standing firm and not budging and moving on forward to get things completed. And I think if you look at my history, that's what I did for 6 years. I mean, after 6 months, they said, oh, we're going to get her out of there. No, if there's something that's wrong, you're going to stand there, you're going to work at it, and you're going to listen. But respect is two ways. Once you're elected, it's those Democrats, it's those Republicans, it's the undeclared that you have to pull together. They have to feel confident to come to the table and work at solutions. And that's what needs to happen. Respect, discussions, solutions.
Thanks. I've actually campaigned in House District 41 in the middle of February, one of the coldest Februaries I ever remember, with Dina Howes, and it was a tough race, and I know that district all too well. I also know other parts of the 2nd District, not just Farmington, where I'm from, but Stonington, where my grandfather and the Millses are buried from all behind the Burnt Cove Church, and Ashland, where I spent all my summers and holidays and up in the county. And I know that people feel that Democrats and Republicans in the southern part of the state are not listening to people in the second district. I'll be there to listen, and I'll take action, and I'll make sure that educational opportunity is not disparate, but equal, all across the districts, all across the school systems, and make sure that when high-tech jobs come to Maine, they pick areas like Washington County. When it's clean renewable energy sources coming to Maine, that they pick areas like Washington County. Why not? I'll be the biggest marketer and cheerleader for this area that you've ever seen, because I love this area.
Thank you. My name is Christopher Palmiata. I'm from Asbury Park, New Jersey, and I moved up here about 5 years ago, and farming, which helped my life out a lot. My question would be the conversation about diversity in Maine, and poor white America that you see in down East Maine as well, and then creating cultural education, promotion of arts in down East Maine, the inclusion and support of these organizations and grassroots movements that promote equality and conversations that need to happen on a local level. And I feel like a lot of these topics are not separate issues. I feel like they're all connected. And that's all I wanted to ask. So thank you.
Betsy, you started off.
Thank you, Krista, for your question. It's a wonderful one. I have 2 daughters from Cambodia, and they are brown-skinned girls in a very white state. And the first thing that they did when they could go to school was go somewhere where there were more people who looked like them. And it was really hard to watch them grow up and have some difficulties that they had. I worked with Steve Wessler in the Attorney General's office before Janet was the Attorney General to start the Civil Rights Team Project. Because I think that our young people, we worked with young people in 470 schools across the state to teach young people and to help them to learn their leadership skills on how to be welcoming and how to be respectful and how to treat people equally. That is one of the things we need most. If we look at where the promise is for our economic development and our who's starting the businesses most quickly in Maine, it's immigrants. And so we have got to stop saying they're not from here, they're not like us. Look at the welcome mat we did not put out as people started moving to our state. We have the opportunity to say, you're welcome here, everybody here matters, everybody here is deserving of respect, and we are going to treat each other, and we're going to lead by example, by treating people with kindness and respect and compassion and valuing all the resources, cultural, diversity, and otherwise that we bring to the state. That's our promise as a state, I think, when we figure that out.
We've always had some challenges in Maine because we are so homogenous, and it really got exacerbated when Paul LePage took office because he took the natural prejudices people had and he exploited them to divide us. And any time that people are doing that, it's for a different purpose. It is for the purpose of making sure that the people in power stay in power, because when low-income people and people of color are fighting with one another, we cannot fight the real enemy, which are the people that are keeping us all down. And that's a real problem. We need to be welcoming people. We need to be standing up to ICE. My friend's husband was deported a year ago to this week. She has to visit her husband in Guatemala. We need to make sure that we are welcoming people in, but that our tone at the top is inclusive and different than the tone that we have seen. And whether it is a person of color, it is someone from the LGBT community, it is a woman, a person of a different faith than the rest of the state, it should not matter because we all bleed red. And I think one of the ways that we bring people together, Christopher, is through the arts. Because through those arts are ways that we can have conversations that we don't otherwise have, that we can appreciate something, not realizing who actually created it, and being able to have your eyes opened. And it took me moving to Philadelphia and living there for a year in a city that has a lot of color for me to actually start to understand institutional systemic oppression and racism, because I didn't understand it here. And I came from a high school that had the Confederate flag, and there was a time in middle school where I did not understand why that was a problem. And so we need to be educating people and talking to people about what symbols mean and how that translates into how we treat each other.
Great, so when I talked about immigration and being a more welcoming state, back in the summer, somehow Breitbart got a hold of it and twisted it into I hate white people. And I want to correct the record, I do not hate white people, but you can't even start to have this conversation without it becoming so hyper-partisan that it becomes foolish. We have to figure this one out for our state. And the next governor, no matter which one of us it will be, and I do believe it will be one of us, has to figure this out. Our economy, we have to figure it out. If not, we've got 50% of our workforce today that is eligible to retire in 10 years. We can't have enough babies in that amount of time, and we can't keep enough kids here in that amount of time. We have to become a much more welcoming state and make sure that we're integrating our immigrant community into our workforce. They are part of our comeback story.
In my 12 years that I just finished with a nonprofit organization, if we had closed our doors to the new workforce, their workforce is not replacing individuals, it's enhancing the workforce that we have. These individuals come with a lot of skills and a lot of desire and willingness to open up business, to take on jobs and do a very good job. I have a very diverse background of individuals that are related to me. And that's not important what they are, who they are. It's that we respect them, we pull them into the process, and through arts, culture, it's education. We bring their backgrounds, we teach people what they have, and that enhances what we're aware of, and it makes us more sympathetic to what their needs are. Because right now we just say things have to be the way they are. We have to be respectful of everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. You know, I believe in the words of Martin Luther King, who said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can drive out darkness. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can drive out hate. And that's one of the reasons that I've stood up for the immigrants coming to Maine, and stood up against the Trump administration, against the DACA rollback, against the 7-country Muslim ban. We've gone to court, we got a nationwide injunction against Trump's rollback of the DACA program, because I determined there are hundreds of young people in the state of Maine, of all different colors and origins, who deserve to be here, who are living here, working here, going to school here, and who do not deserve to be deported back to some war-torn country that they never even knew. That's why I've stood up to the Trump administration. And that's why I've also expanded the civil rights program. And I'm very proud to sponsor the civil rights program in more than 200 schools right now. We have our conference coming up in a few weeks, and I'm going to be delighted to take part in that as well.
Governor LePage has certainly made this worse, but we have a long history of it. When my meme and Pepe came down from Canada, Maine had the highest percentage of KKK members in the country per capita. This is a history that we've had, and now we're looking at this state, and we have the oldest population in the country. We're one of 2 states where our population isn't growing, and we've got this history of saying people are from away. Right? I mean, it's one of those things. My wife's from Columbia. She's been in Maine for over 20 years. People still say that. At what point do you become a Mainer? At what point do we start having some leadership in this state where we have a cultural shift, where we stop saying we've never done it that way before, where we start creating more of a welcoming environment? Leadership to do that comes right from the top, and that's something that I would be a strong proponent of, creating more diversity and more welcoming environment here in the state.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. I would like to ask the candidates to please observe the red card.
It's hard.
Wait
45
for it.
seconds is so short.
Wave it a little more vigorously, will you?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I know it's quite the drive, so we appreciate you being here. My name is Melissa Heiderman. I was born and raised in Machias, so I came back to live here. This is my boyfriend, JJ Tibbetts. He worked at DCF for 24 years, almost. My mind is kind of racing. I could say so much, and I'm trying to keep it short. As you know, on February 9th, Governor LePage ordered Maine State Police, their tactical force, to come and literally take over the prison. Our employees were literally told to sit down and shut up. There were no weapons at DCF. They came in with a task force. We've been fighting the last 2 months to try and get people to listen to us, listen to the truth at every turn, every corner. Governor LePage has been lying. He has been flat out lying. In his radio address just a few weeks ago, he said, he was talking about Maine Wild or BBS and Machias Sport, where they employ inmates. He lied and said that, he was told that they're gonna lay off local people to re-employ the inmates, which is a flat out lie. He's literally defaming successful local businesses. And yes, I do have a question, I'm so sorry. I could say so much. We've been busy collecting letters from the community, business leaders, elected officials, organizations, nonprofits, in support of DCF and all of the programs that they've had and utilized and what they've done in this community. We've literally saved the state millions of dollars. Millions. We can prove it. It's just hard getting someone to listen. It's been beyond frustrating, but my question is, and I have so much information, I'd love to send it to you all. I can email it to you. My overall question is, do you support DCF? And when you become governor, what will you do to help us in the future to fully fund us? And we have so many rehabilitation programs to talk about people who are in crisis. I have testimonies from inmates and even a mother. She completely contributes she says, DCF gave me my son back.
I've got those letters too.
Yes, so thank you for your time.
Melissa and TJ and everybody, did I get that right? JJ, sorry, I was listening for half my hearing's going. I want you to understand one thing. We believe you, and you have actually been heard. I know how hard it is and how frustrating it is. And the lies coming from the top, the commander-in-chief, demonizing, dehumanizing you, what they did that on February 9th that morning, the way that they treated the service people as criminals is itself criminal. There are legislative challenges with the governor in order to fix that. And so I want you to understand that at least on the Democratic side, and I know Will Toole and Robert Alley and Ann Perry and Joyce Maker have been fighting very hard as a collective delegation for you all. And I met with folks at the State House when folks were there. We have heard you. We believe you. We know that the lies are there. And as governor, I think everybody can speak for themselves, but I think that anyone at this panel is going to do everything in their power to make sure that you get your community back, you get DCF back, and that we fund it properly. We thoroughly recognize who you are, what you have done, and what you have been through. And we're really sorry. It's hard to answer a question like this in 45 seconds and to give it its value. This is a really important question, and it gets to the soul of what is happening in Washington County right now. So I did take liberties, and for good reason.
I could literally talk all day about this.
I know.
You almost did.
I think it's better when women are heard.
It does go to the point though of how as a county we have been so denigrated. Between our roads, and it's not just Route 1.
Yeah, I know.
This was sort of the last straw of how we've been treated as a county. And I'm from Hawaii. I've just been here 3 years and started a business.
All right, if I can reassert control.
Yes, so to answer the question very clearly and quickly, yes, DCF would be funded and fully funded on day one, and it should be right now. I mean, right now, the governor has turned his back on Washington County. Ken Fredette, if you know anything about Ken Fredette, has turned his back on Washington County. And it's not that hard to see. I mean, they're out in daylight doing it. And yes, there are lies being said. And trust me, I know how frustrating that is, and well, yeah, I do kind of know how frustrating it is to lose a job after the governor goes out, yeah. But symptom of the bigger problem, that we have a governor that has no respect for the rule of law, and will do things and break the rules and break the norms to get what he wants, and throw tantrums while doing it. So I hope that I am in a position to fully fund DCF this time next year.
Funding is not a question. It's the disrespect and reestablishing. And it's sad to say that individuals were incarcerated in order to assist economic development in this area. But at the same time, it was that looking at the full client, the full person, and looking at his needs, and that's what you were addressing, their full needs. How do we transition them? What kind of businesses were impacted? And how do we fund that? And you see that throughout the state at other locations. So what was done to you at the 11th hour and someone coming in with no notification is totally disrespectful. And now we're going to have to earn your confidence to make you realize that we truly want to support you and get that system back up so you, again, support the economy that's in here and the people who need your assistance and not move them out of this area. Thank you.
Well, I was more than happy to take your side in the court of law and to help achieve and get an injunction against this governor, against this Department of Corrections for doing what they did to you and those 63 inmates as well. And I got letters from inmates who said to me, you know, this is the best place I've ever been. I've got a job. I have the best feeling of self-worth that I never had before. And I'm paying my way and I'm paying room and board, which makes me doubt the governor's financial expectations of the cost for the unit. I don't think it costs $5 or $6 million a year. People are paying room and board and they're earning their keep. And I got letters from people who said, I'm making restitution for the first time in my life. I'm paying child support for the first time in my life. And that kind of facility cannot be you know, shoved under the rug. It has to be reinvented and reconstituted, and we need to support it. Pardon me?
We should have been a model for the rest of the state.
Exactly. Taking them over to the mountaintop in Charleston where there's no community, no jobs, no businesses was wrong.
Right.
You were treated unfairly, treated wrongly, completely agree. This is funding issue for sure. I agree with the funding. The thing that bothers me the most about all of this is the middle of the night, disrespectful, behind the back. Think Betsy called it Gestapo-like. Yeah, I would agree with that. You don't do anything up front in the middle of the night like that. This is just terrible. It has to do with the toxicity that's happening in Augusta, the terrible leadership, I can't believe this is happening in my state or in my country. I thought we lived in a democracy. Day-to-dayness of our lives right now. The types of people we elect in 2018 will determine whether this is a trend or an anomaly. And I'm really hopeful this is an anomaly in our history, what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think we all agree on this. And JJ, I want to say, I totally agree that not only should this facility not have been shut down, but it should be the model. It's a model of restorative justice. It's a model of transitioning people from a correctional facility into the communities, of people taking responsibility for their actions and then earning money and be able to do restitution. It is a model of what could happen in our criminal justice system. I think we have a long way to go in our criminal justice system. I talked about it earlier. To warehouse people, kick them out and say good luck, and then we say, why did they come back? What happened? Right? I'm like, oh, it's not rocket science. So I think absolutely I agree, and I saw both of you down in Augusta, and I'm so appreciating all your time there. But I also want to talk a minute about how you do it. So let's just say for a minute, let's give the governor, okay, I can't do it. I was going to say, let's give him a But let's just say that you had concerns. So what you do as a governor, as any person, is you go talk to people. You call people in. You talk to the people who are working there. You talk to the community members, to the businesses, to the inmates, and your legislators, and you bring them all together and say, how do we fix this? Not who can we blame? And so, thank you for your work, and we will get this back for you. Was it something we said?
My name is Bob McCollum. I I retired, my wife and I retired 4 years ago. And she wanted to come back home, so I followed her.
Smart man.
What is important to me is that I'm extremely, extremely impressed by all 6 of you. And if we could just mush you all together and have a super day, I think that would be a good thing to do. But since we can't, can we get a solid, super pledge that from the 5 of you that don't become governor, and the 1 of you that does become governor, that you'll pool the intelligence from this group together, that you won't just walk away saying, well, I'm the governor, so I'm going to do the things that I want to do. Because all of you have some extremely intelligent and I think effective ways of treating this state. Can we get that pledge? From each of you?
Yes.
Good question, Bob. Mark starts with it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Ms. Short, you don't have to pull the red card.
I'll take that.
Keep your feet to the fire.
And feet to the fire.
That's
Yes,
a question.
absolutely.
The answer is yes, and I think my past and everything that I've done when I was mayor, prior to being mayor, after mayor, staying where there was issues and something had to be addressed, is to work at it collaboratively. I believe that.
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. I'm done.
Yes, I agree completely. It's not that different from the first question, which was, you know, what makes you so unique and different? I haven't spent so much of my time, you know, trying to distinguish myself from the others as much as I just feel so led to do this, and this is the time. And if I do not win this race, I'm going to work my butt off that someone on this table will, because these are just awful times, and people need to step up. We need new leadership. We need to focus on it, and we've got to win this thing. I don't know how else to say it, right? I mean, people are marching, people are doing all this stuff, but what good is that going to do if we've got another Paula Page for the next 7 or 8 years? And really focus on winning, people. Big picture. We're on the same team. We got to win this thing. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things we have to really pledge as well is how we run in the next 8 weeks. We can't run by tearing each other down, because then we're going to have so much damage in June to make up for, and then the independents and the Republicans are going to take off. So I'm committed, certainly, and I think most of us are, to say, here's our positive thing, here's what we think we can bring, but these are extraordinarily smart people. I said it before, I always say, I'm so glad you got to be my cabinet first, right? We are smart people. We also know really smart people, and we have a lot of experience. So I think this is, I mean, people have said it, and I agree that this is one of the strongest slates of Democratic candidates we've had for governor in a really long time, and any one of us is way better than anything else that's out there. So, and I too will work for whoever.
On the upside, we don't really have a high bar to hit, right? I'm gonna let you in on a secret. So we're all competing because we want to be the team captain, but we are actually a team. We actually do. We've been traveling the state together. We enjoy each other's company. We all share a love of Maine, whether we go back generations to the 1600s or we're new recruits. We just love our state and we love the people in it, and we're really horrified by what's happening. But isn't it great that we have ranked choice voting? You all get to not vote for just one of us. I mean, you can, but why would you? You get to vote for all of us. So think about it, like if you have this one candidate that you're all in on, but then there's some other candidates that said some really smart things, go in and vote for them second and third place. That is, when Dick Woodbury and I launched the Citizens Initiative, it was about voting your hopes, not your fears. Now you get to do that. They all seeded it.
By implication.
By implication.
Extended by implication. Sorry.
Give a politician a microphone.
My name is Bob Jean from Levant, and I think one of the things, when you try to pick out a governor, you try to figure out, like, from the last governor, the kinds of things that we really need to fill those weaknesses from the last governor. And one of the things that I've noticed from Governor LePage is that, he doesn't use much principle. We'll all agree here, but next week's gonna be the Republicans, and they will agree too, which is a whole other ballgame. But when you get into principle, I guess one of the things that troubles me is we have the charter school issue. And the charter school issue is one where you're taking all kinds of funding out of the public system, you're bypassing unions. Even this institution, here in the Down East, it's critical that we have our public funding for our schools, and our teachers and our unions are well compensated. So I guess for everybody else, I sort of want to ask about how you'll govern with principle. But I did want to fine tune that, my question to Speaker Eves, to give you a chance to address some issues. I did a little research before I came, and you have always had a principle in your public service that you oppose charter schools and you supported public funding. But when you left the speaker's race, you used one of your top staff people who was on the board of a charter school to help you arrange your resume. Your particular school took over $1 million that could have gone to the public school system. You were totally bypassing the union system. So if you could just elaborate, how the distinction between your principle and actually walking the talk, I guess. And thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really appreciate that question.
Let me just say, our principle here is that every candidate gets to answer every question. So you will get to answer it, but we're going to adhere to the speaking order. And I interpret the question to be one about charter schools. So we do have
Principal.
And charter schools.
Okay, and we start with Donna.
I think charter schools does play a role because people have the right, but should we be taking the money from the public schools and diminishing what they're having? No. I think the charter schools are independent. If there's going to be additional funding, it should never injure the regular schools. We have academies. Thornton Academy is in Suffolk, and the individual there, the person has a choice. They made a determination of a dollar amount, and if that student chooses to go to a public school, the money follows them. If they choose to go to a private school, it goes with them. And I look at charter schools in a similar fashion, but it should never injure the public schools. That's my principle, is equal training for the individual should never injure the location they want to go in order to go. And sometimes we see that in this administration, money is moving from place to place. Sorry, I have to stop. I respect this young man.
Let me just say, I've had no participation in charter schools whatsoever, either as a legislator or a private citizen or as Attorney General, but my principles are standing up for the people of Maine and standing up for health care particularly. And that's why I've taken on the LePage administration. And when he tried to take thousands of Maine children off of Medicaid, I stood up to him, went to court and won, and kept those kids on Medicaid, on health care. And when he said Narcan doesn't save lives, it only postpones death, I took pharmaceutical settlement money and I bought a room full of Narcan, and I've taken it everywhere across the state of Maine. I have some in my car right now. And I've given it out to 78 different police departments, and as of the other day, we've saved 359 lives. I'm about getting the job done, standing up for principles, and the principles I stand up for are standing up for Maine people, standing up for health care and health and well-being of Maine people.
My principles, if you see a unifying trend in my life, I guess it's a commitment to service. I've got a great wife, great kids. I've had 3 combat tours. I've worked in clean energy. I've given back to my community. I'm running because I really, truly love this state. I don't know anybody, anything. Got a great family, good job, but I'm just convinced we need new leadership. I'm convinced we need people that are going to stand up and focus on improving the lives of folks. I don't know how else to say it plainly. My sense of self isn't tied to winning this race, and it isn't tied to impressing anybody, frankly. I want to win, I feel led to win, and I want to see us start leading again. So my principles, I guess I'd simply say, I haven't positioned my life, but it's run from this office to the next, and I've got to sort of impress or do different things. I guess that's my guiding light with a lot of this. I know who I am as a person. I feel comfortable with that, to be able to lead.
Great. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and my dad always said to us, make sure you leave a place better than you found it. He meant sweep the floor and change the beds. I thought he meant change the world. So I've had the great honor in my life for 35 years to advocate for what I think is right, for my true north. I have an advocacy business. You're going to see commercials from people saying I'm a lobbyist. I'm an advocate for low-income people, for women, for children. And the moniker of my company, Moose Ridge Associates, is known by the company we keep. Because I have never strayed from those values. I could have made money as a lobbyist for a lot of money. And instead, what I did was get a lot of low-income social service nonprofit organizations to give a little bit of money so that they had representation, so we got voices to the table. That has been who I am. That's who I am. That's how I've lived my life. That's how I've raised my 3 daughters. And it's how I've figured out how to make a living doing exactly what is my true north, which is how do we help the people of Maine. I've never strayed from that. It's also why I'm running as a clean elections candidate, because one thing that can pull you from your values is your donors and your big donors, and that's why I think it's so important that we run as clean election candidates.
I've never really taken the politically sound positions. A lot of folks put their hand up, their finger up, and they check the wind, and I'm glad that everybody's a progressive suddenly, because when I dove into the water, there were polar bears swimming around. When I drove 3 days to go to Wisconsin in the middle of the teachers union protests, I was attacked. I debated Sean Hannity, and I had people calling me and telling me, why aren't you at work at the State House while it was a shutdown day. Marijuana legalization, when I introduced that tomorrow, 7 years ago, the Portland Press Herald said he's getting into mischief, which is something they never say about men, by the way. And now all of a sudden, John Boehner and Bernie Sanders and everybody's on board. When I took on the DNC for the superdelegates, it was not fancy. When I took on RCV all the way to the Supreme Court, these are the places where you go. You have to be consistent about your values.
Great, thank you. And one of my values and principles is really the reason why I got into the profession I did as a family therapist is to help people. It's why I ran for elected office for the first time. It's why I ran for Speaker of the House. It's why I'm running for governor. And when I had an opportunity to work for an institution that had a 140-year history of helping at-risk kids, after I was termed out, after 8 years in the legislature, I thought it was a great opportunity. For me, there really wasn't a conflict between the charter school piece. My position has been, we need to fund our public schools fully before we do expand charter schools. Now, we did make some changes in the legislature about making sure that we are holding our public school districts harmless. I think all charter schools are not created equally as well. Look at virtual online schools versus what Goodwill Hinckley was doing. When the governor found out that I went through a fully vetted national search, and the board of directors, teachers, parents, students, all interviewed, and they came to the conclusion that I would be the best one to lead their institution, I was very proud of that. The governor was very upset. He blackmailed the school. The $1 million that you refer to is the $1 million that was allocated in the budget. And he called the board president and said, if you don't fire Mark Eves, you don't get the money. That would have shut down the school for kids at risk. So for me, the values and the principles are about kids and making sure that we're showing up every day to do everything that we can to advance their lives, and in that case, it happened to be kids at risk.
Mr. Eves, you used one of your staff people. Yeah, you used one of your staff people who gave you special treatment and didn't do anything to the other people who applied.
Okay.
So, if I may really quickly, I'd love to talk to you offline about that. There's a little bit of misinformation, but we can talk offline about that. Thank you.
Okay, we've run out of time. I know I have one more question coming forward about infrastructure, but we're just kind of pushing our limits here. I would like to, we're ready for the closing statements, and it turns out, just by the luck of the draw, that we're back to the original. Sorry, Janet, but before we start the closing statements, I will ask the candidates if they can. I know that you have some long drives ahead of you, but I will ask you to stay around, and I'll ask members of the audience who are interested in further conversation to stay around after we adjourn for further discussion as you're able to do it. Okay, and with that, I will ask Janet to start the closing statement.
Oh, that's okay, thank you very much. Listen, it's been a pleasure to come back to Washington County and made many visits here. Fundamentally, I've always stood up for Maine people. And for victims of domestic abuse and gun violence, for working families, for small businesses and homeowners facing foreclosures. I stood up to Paul LePage when he tried to take thousands of children off of health care. I stood up to Donald Trump when he tried to allow big polluters to spoil our air and water. I stood up to Ryan Zinke, Mr. Zinke, and objected to offshore drilling for oil and gas off our shores. I took on Wall Street corporations and big pharma and took them on and won. I have a vision for this state, though, and the vision is someone who's won 8 elections in the 2nd Congressional District. My vision is of a state that is undivided, prosperous north to south, west to east, where our kids will find good-paying jobs close to home, where we make our own renewable energy, and where every town has high-speed internet, where our teachers are valued and our children are safe. That's my vision for the state of Maine, a place where your children and your grandchildren and mine can find a state that is safe and beautiful and prosperous, the state that I've always been proud to call home. And I have one question. Is Helen's open after 8?
Come on, no blueberry pie.
Wait, my pie, I want pie.
Terrific event. Thanks for having us all. The reality is, and we're talking about this trend versus an anomaly, in the Democratic Party, we haven't received over 50% of the vote in a statewide race since 1988, when George Mitchell ran for re-election. We've developed a pattern in this state of putting people forward that we vote for in primaries because they say it's their turn to run, or they've been doing this a long time, it's for them to step up. And then they get there in November and they lose. And I think we need a new generation of leadership in the Democratic Party. I believe we need to be focused on what's important to people and what's important to people throughout this state. And I would say, especially in Washington County, is you need a place to go to work on Monday morning. I believe that we need to be focused on that because that demographic cliff is going there. My leadership has been tested and proven in far worse places than Augusta. I have a background on some pretty important energy policy issues and others that are facing us right now. And more importantly, the ability to bring people together and get people excited about working for government again. We get to unify the party, and then we get to win this thing. So thank you for being here today, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I already had my coconut cream pie, I'm very excited about it. I want to thank you all for coming as well. We really have an opportunity in 2018. If we think that more of the same is going to serve us, and we think that's what's going to get elected, then I'm not your candidate. I don't think we can fix what's broken by tinkering around the edges. We have an opportunity to do something really different, to stand up with some bold ideas. We didn't get to talk about all of them, but also to show how we elect people is how we will govern. We have the opportunity to elect the first clean elections candidate in the country, right? We have the chance for Maine to show the rest of the world we can do this differently. We can say, we're not going to go against the dark money of the Republican Party by saying, oh, we need more, we're like them, it's terrible, but we're just going to whine about it. We're going to say, we reject how broken things are, and we're going to do something different. We have been fabulous at saying no and resisting and making sure the Affordable Care Act was stopped in the country by saying no. I think Maine people are ready to say yes. We want to say yes to positive things, to healthcare, to clean energy, and to being kind and caring about each other and rebuilding our communities. I hope I can earn your vote, and if you want to invest $5 in something really different, see me, I'll talk. Thank you very much.
Hi again. So I'm gonna ask you, are you fired up to take back the Blaine House?
Yes.
All right, let's try this again. Are you fired up to take back the Blaine House? Yeah. So I talked to you about the systemic change that I've already brought, and I want you to know that all three of those major accomplishments got done in 2016. 1 year. It took a good amount of time to get there, but imagine what we could do in 2019 if you put a change agent in charge. If I am elected, if you nominate me, I will deliver to you Medicare for all. And if the legislature won't do it, I'll bring it to ballot with you. I also want to bring a state public bank to Maine so that we can get our treasury out of Wall Street and start investing it on Main Street into student loans, into infrastructure, into small business loans. And I also believe that we need a new deal, an economic security bill of rights, because when our people, our workers do better, our entire economy does better. A right to a job, a right to fair wages, a right to equal pay, freedom from discrimination, a right to a secure retirement. These are all things that we need in Maine. And the last thing I would say is that if you have not heard about the Opportunity Maine program, as students here, please talk to Professor Reisman, who was one of the earlier people who came to my defense when we were all charging forward to bring the Opportunity Maine program to Maine, which will save you significant amounts of student debt. Thank you. I hope I can earn your support.
Well, thank you for hosting us. I'm running for governor for a lot of reasons, but 3 of them are my 3 kids, Elena, Lucas, and Naomi, and they're 13, 11, and 8. And I think about our state and all the opportunity that we have, whether it's leading in the clean energy economy, making sure that we're fully funding our kids' schools, make sure that we are making robust investments in our vocational training program so that they can find good paying jobs. Whatever it is, there's incredible opportunity for our state. And in 10 years when my kids are 23, 21, and 18, I want them to find their future right here. We have everything we need to figure this out together, but we need the right leadership. We need people that have been there, that can get it done, and that can build coalitions, not just with Democrats that agree with us, but with Republicans. For 8 years, I did that in the state legislature, whether it was with Mike Thibodeau, the president of the Maine State Senate, or Brad Barron, or even David Burns here from Washington County. We worked on an affordable senior housing bond together and got it to the governor's desk. He vetoed it, we got it on the ballot, and now it sits on the governor's desk. We need leadership that can get results, and we need a candidate that can win a statewide election. I hope you'll consider our candidacy, Mark Eves, and I ask for your vote. Thanks so much.
I was an elected official for 6 years, and something I realized is that all the issues are very important to answer. But when you sit in that seat, you will find out that it's not just those issues. There's another whole big picture there in running the state. And my word for respect was from someone who asked me, put everything you want to do in one word. And I thought about it and I said respect. Because it's going to take we. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or someone that hasn't enrolled yet, you're still a citizen of the state of Maine. Voting is just getting someone to that location. You need someone who's going to look at the broad picture, and that's what I've done for 45 years. I did it with 20 plus years in the nonprofit, looking at people who needed assistance and how do we stretch that dollar when the state kept cutting it, and me fighting with the state getting more money, or being mayor and looking at the air toxic ordinance and chemicals being spewed, looking at UNE who needed to expand, looking at people who were upset because their voices weren't heard. If anything, I listen, I look, I feel, and I'm not going to be pushed over. I have real big feet. Thank you.
Note of humor for this excellent Democratic primary forum. A number of years ago, some of you may remember, we had over in the PAC a group of candidates, I think from a local officers, I can't even remember if they were Democrat or Republican. But somebody stood up, and you don't have to answer this, anybody. Somebody stood up and said, this is a local question, remember, what about the dike? What about the dikes? Now, some of you crossed over back and forth to Helen's, you know, there's between Helen's and Cat's Pizza is the causeway. That is what we call the dike. There always is an issue right now with it, but that stung to silence. Pam, I don't remember who you were, some of you will remember. It stung to silence. We have at this campus right here a very open and affirming campus. It is well known throughout the state and the nation. We have a very welcome and affirming church community in Machias, and so it's really good to be here and listen to you folks, because I know you all are on the right side of that issue.
Can I just say, I worked on the campaign of Dale McCormick, who was the first openly gay representative in the country, actually, back in the early 90s. And so it was also the time of the Edwards Dam being broken. And so all her signs were defaced. And someone wrote on it, dike, you know, dike, but they spelled it D-I-K-E. And she was interviewed by the newspaper, and they said, well, what do you think about this? She said, I guess they don't like my position on the Edwards Dam.
Only in Washington.
No.
Thank you for that, I think. Yes.
I'm just jumping in 1 second. If anybody wants to do voter registration, we're gonna go to the
Oh,
back of
good.
the room so everybody can talk to candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
There are a lot of thanks to go out today, but I think we owe a special thanks to our timekeeper. And we should note that the applaud lasted beyond the time that. This is a good audience. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have tonight. It's a real push to, within this 2-hour time frame, to have 6 candidates here and be able to hear a fair amount from all of them. I'd really like to especially thank the candidates for coming to Washington County, thank the good-sized crowd that we have and for your participation. Certainly, I thank UMM and Kay, the head campus here, for putting on this event. And especially, I'd just like to repeat the thanks to John Reisman, who's been coordinating and arranging and browbeating people to come to these things for decades here at UMM. So thank you, everyone.
May the best woman